Wir haben heute Abend die Ehre, eine kleine Einführung in das Lebenswerk dieses Ausnahmekünstlers und Glasgenies zu erhalten. Es ist das Resümee aus 50 Jahren künstlerischer Tätigkeit, immer begleitet von der Erforschung des Mediums Glas. Das Glas ist für Narcissus Quagliata der Pinsel, womit er seine Kunstwerke gestaltet. Die Einbeziehung des Lichts verleiht seinen Objekten die Dreidimensionalität und Einzigartigkeit. Wir werden nicht nur die Bilder von Narcissus Quagliata sehen, sondern erleben heute die erste Vorstellung seines neuen Buches, an dem er 6 Jahre gearbeitet hat. Wir werden die ersten Menschen sein, die sein Buch mit dem Titel Mutant oder in Englisch Mutant heute in den Händen halten dürfen. Der Rest der Welt muss leider bis morgen warten. Das Buch wurde letzte Woche gedruckt und auch Narcissus hat es erst hier in die Hand bekommen. Freuen wir uns auf die Synonyme von Mutant und auch das Leben und den Geist von Narcissus Quagliata.
We all have the honor tonight to receive a small introduction to the life's work of this exceptional artist and glass genius. It is a resume of 50 years of artistic activity accompanied by the exploration of the medium of glass. The glass is for Narcissus Quagliata the brush he used to design this artwork. The inclusion of light gives this object three-dimensionality and uniqueness. Not only that you will get through the lecture a picture of Narcissus Quagliata, we will also be seeing the first performance of his new book entitled Mutant, on which he has worked for more than 6 years. We all are the first people in the universe who can hold this book in our hands. The book was printed last week and also Narcissus held his book the first time in his hand on the way to Schloss Holte. The rest of the world has to wait until tomorrow. Let's look at the synonyms of mutants and to the life and spirit of Narcissus Quagliata.
It's an honor to be here, and it's an honor to be again with my friends, Frieder and Marita. This is a special evening for me. And I have my notes, but I will give a lecture which is divided in two. The first half, which should be 15 or maximum 20 minutes, is my life and work, the best of. And the second half is my mind, my heart, which I'm presenting with the second book. To be very specific, this is my life as an artist is in here. My life as a person is in here. It's a little small, but it's okay. And my life as an artist is full of color. There's lots of color. My life of the soul is mostly in black and white, but there is some color. So it's almost as if I structured this lecture to represent two things, and it really made me, I really thought about it. One has a life, one works, one experiences the world, one does things, and that's a life. Then there is another life, which is everything you think of and you feel. So as I look back on 50 years, I have my work and my experiences as an artist, and then I have 50 years of thinking and feeling and wondering and being excited and many other things. All of that is underground. It just so happens that I have access to all of it because I sketch all the time and I have 205 sketchbooks that start from 1968. And I sketch everything I think of. And then, as a hobby, these last 50 years, I have been writing. And I have been writing poems and thoughts and feelings, and over the years, my writings, if you stack them all, they come to about that much, about there. And it was, I want to explain this, it was when I have a friend who I asked to write the first chapter, Maricruz Patiño, of this book, which is commentary on my personal work. So she was very nervous and she wanted to see me lots of times. She's a very famous poet in Mexico and Latin America. So one day she comes discussing the chapter 1 of that book as it was being made. And I say, listen, Maricruz, can you tell me? Nobody has ever read anything I've ever written. You're a close friend. Tell me if you could just read some things and tell me if there's any value. So she says, fine, just give me 60 pages and I'll tell you. So I gave her 60 pages, and I will talk about what happened in the second part of this lecture. Let me tell you about, I would like to kind of announce a couple of things. I want to take this occasion, I'm in a moment of change in my life, and I want to announce that where I am and what I'm going to do in the next years. So, where I am now is I live half the time in Mexico and half the time in Los Angeles. I'm in Los Angeles because the Judson Studio accepted a multi-million-dollar commission for a project, and they had no clue how to make it. None. It was a traditional stained glass studio, and the artist, Tim Carey, had designed this enormous window for this Kansas City site, 11 meters by 30. And they won the competition. But then they said, oh my God, what are we going to do? So they knew me, and they figured that my fusing technique would be perfect. So they looked for me, and they invited me in LA. Tim took a workshop from me in Denver, and he told me to go to LA, and I went, and they asked me, will you be the producer of this window? Now, at first it was shocking. I mean, I've only done my own work. So to be the producer of a window seemed kind of strange. My daughter said, Dad, are you sure you want to do somebody else's work? And in truth, yes. And the reason is because by doing somebody else's work, I learned 90% of what I know about fusing today. So everybody who took a workshop from me up to 3 years ago didn't get the best of me. Sorry. But now I really do know. I made 161 windows, 1.20 meters by 1.60 meters, completely in fusing. I was telling Marita, today I feel I could, give me a Rembrandt, I could do it in glass. You know, I could reproduce it in glass. In other words, I fully grasped. You know, I'm 77, so I'm a slow learner. But I fully grasped what it is to paint with glass. The problem is that I'm 77, and you know, we're all mortal, and I want to be able to leave what I know behind. So my next 2 years are going to be dedicated to my own work, personal work, and to downloading everything I know in the form of a book, in the form of 25 lectures to start with over the next 2 years. I am organizing myself to be able to pass this on to people so that I can feel free.
Right.
And let me, nothing is happening. Okay, oh, I have to. Okay, so just before I really start the lecture, I wanted to tell you, this is the old Judson Studio building, which is where I have my apartment. On the upper left side, it's a building from 1905, which in LA, it's actually a monument. In LA, it's a protected monument. What really happened is that after we did that enormous window, Judson Studio invested heavily into the fusing as a vision of how a glass could be developed as something very Californian, something very authentic, something that has a tradition in the craft movement, and they asked me to stay on, so that's why I'm there half the year. And after I finished the direction of the big project, I'm finishing a project of my own, and now I'm going to just devote myself to transmit this to people and do my own personal work. So I wanted to let you know, and there has been a wonderful synchronicity, as you can see, because the studio which uses fusing is to the left, which is the Judson Studio. We have a resource center to the right. And I am very proud to feel that I am the first person to really convince a major studio in the world to invest in this technique. I mean, I'm proud to have developed it, but it's nice to see that a big traditional studio believes in it. So there you have it. And before I start my lecture, I'm going to tell you, that I'm setting up the videoing of all this. So if you want to sign up for the series, just send us your name, tell us who you are, and in 2 or 3 months we'll get back to you with the specifics. So having said that, now I can start my real lecture. So, 50 years, 60 years actually. What happened?
Nothing.
I mean, that is me when I was an 8-year-old. And so, this is a life, and I'm not going to talk about a lot about art. I'm going to talk about life and pass the art very quickly. This is the first time I do this. Please be patient. So I decided that I would do it by scenes. So this is a few pictures to connect to what I just said. We did this huge project, which would deserve a lecture of its own, a 2-hour lecture of its own. But here it is. I'm the old man, that's the young man. He's the guy that, it was very strange, he's extremely Christian. And I'm not. And it was very interesting for me to have to go through the entire Bible. But I learned a lot. And he explained every figure and all of the biblical figures that he put in. There's 96 figures in this piece. And I did only 2. The child that is sick, that Mother Teresa is doing, and I did the galaxy. Those things I did all by myself. The others, it was a collaboration. Tim knew nothing about fusing when we started. So the first 30 panels, all the glass I did myself, and then finally started getting into it. So this is part of the piece in installation. As you can see, it's 61 panels. So that's, he did the figures, I did the galaxy. But I wanted, this show is not about this piece, but I wanted to show you something about the material, which is so extraordinary. So here, in order to do this galaxy, I had to rethink everything. So I had to rethink fusing from the very beginning in this project. It was wonderful. I had to stay ahead of Tim and invent the ways we were going to do it. I had never done a galaxy like this. I had to figure out how to do it. The ones I did before were so simple, but this time I got it right. So, so here is the glass. Have the glass do the galaxy. Don't draw it. Make it in the kiln. So, the most difficult part, except for the face of Christ, was the garden. Because I had to invent a new technique for every type of flower, every type of vegetation. Wow. And it was really quite extraordinarily difficult. Can you hear me? Yes. So I learned so much. And also this thing was an abstraction. I mean, this is the tree. But if you look closely, I got it in my head to reproduce he designed this on a computer. So I love the computer marks of the tools. And I insisted on making sure that all the computer marks for the tools would be respected. And so, you know, this is not a tree. Can you see that? This is an abstraction done on a computer. This is not a stained glass tree anymore. It's another animal from our century, from our period. And keep inventing, keep inventing, keep inventing. That's the other tree. I had to figure out how to make glasses so that they would fit places. And we kept on producing, and that's the one figure I wanted to do, the sick child. And I'm fully the author of that. But we had a wonderful relationship, and I loved the fact that I found the first student that really got it. In other words, I felt Tim is going to work with this for the rest of his life. He's going to be very successful, and he loves and he gets what the glass can do. So you can sort of see that I live in the old studio, and 3 blocks away is the new studio with all the light tables. It's a dream place for a painter. You can put 16 tables together and you have a huge surface. No other studio exists that has this, like this. So, onward. That's the face of Christ. I'm not going to get into that one because it's another lecture. But I'm going to throw stuff and tell you things about my life. So I'm an artist because of this man, Giorgio de Chirico. I was an 11-year-old boy in Venice with my mother, checking into the Danieli Hotel because my family loved Venice, because my father was the architect of the place where they do the festival. So my father every summer had to go to Venice. So I was in the lobby of the Danieli, famous hotel, holding this little painting, and this man, about that age, just the way he looks, grabbed the painting out of my hand, didn't say a word, didn't look at me, put the painting on the wall, on the ledge, and went to my mother, looked at it, went to my mother and said, "Your son has talent, a lot of talent." And that changed my life, because I was a total failure. I was flunking all my classes in school, I was very poor self-esteem. Here is one of the biggest artists in the world that said that I was really good for something. So I became instantly an artist. And I think you recognize who I'm talking about, you know? These paintings are in the Museum of Modern Art in New York, and he's almost as famous as Picasso. And that's the painting. So I became an artist on the 24th of August of 1953. And I painted that at 6 o'clock in the afternoon, and I painted that in Ciez Maria. And I lost this painting for 30 years and then found it again. Okay, so going from the Chirico to my love, which is the figure. I have so many stories to say about the figure because I don't understand a thing about it. I mean, when you really think about it, I started by working with observing the figures. So I started in stained glass, making very, very realistic things with stained glass. Some of them were on commission, obviously Mr. Sachs, Mrs. Sachs. These are in the De Young Museum. I got commissions, I could make a living. And this is not a commission. And then I began to work with the figure as something that was driven by feeling and intuition. And let's just blow through my entire life in a few slides. These are my first two figures, my androgynous shadow, stained glass suicide. They've been published a lot. Then I got into fusing, and here is a burning head. Very thick. I did these in David Ruth's studio in Oakland. In Derek's studio, I did a wonderful series of enamel paintings on many layers of clear glass. Who are these people, beings? I'm not sure, but I know what they look like. Here is a cyclops talking on the phone. The premonition. A few shots with Selena, one of my favorite crafts people and Derek's worked with me in the Dome. We had a wonderful time doing these pieces. Life. And this is one of my masterpieces. I did this in 2011. And when you get to a certain age, you start competing with yourself. And that's terrible, because you always wonder if you can be as good as you have been. You know, and then I was so unhappy after I finished the Dome, because I really had the feeling that my life was over. And so I said, which is the time you were happiest in my life? And the time I was happiest when nobody knew me, I was starting to work with glass, I did everything I wanted, I was reckless. So I said to myself, why not do the same? I mean, it's just a different age. So I decided to do this piece, which I wondered if it would ever come out. And it's one of my favorite pieces, and it's on 2 layers. It's called The Melancholy of the Mutant. And it is one of the emblematic pieces I have done. So then I did a series, which I'm going to just blow through, which is inspired by Greek art in the sea. I love Greek art. So much of it is in the sea. All the bronzes that we have been found in the sea, with the exception of 2 or 3. And so I have been working for the last 40, 50 years images, since 1982 to be precise, with images of Greek art in the sea interacting with marine life. Some of it in stained glass, and some of it in watercolor. And some of it with fused glass. This group of pieces, which I did at Derek's after I finished the dome, was key, I think is key to the development of glass as a painting. Because at Derek's, by doing the dome, I learned what enamel can do. So I already knew what fusing can do, but I had no clue about enamel. So when I did these pieces where I combined enamel painting with fusing, bang, I thought I ran into a treasure. A way to do a painting where the graphic quality is carried by the enamel and the painting quality is carried by the molten glass. Done. Let's go on to something else. Let's go through the dome. So, I should read my notes. I had a few things to say. The Kaohsiung Dome, it all started with a and I love this image. I even had it photoshopped without the bar at the top, so that you can see these two Michelangelo-esque figures carrying the sun. And the Germans really did carry the sun in this project, because Derek's studio was exemplary and they did such a miracle. And working there has been one of the highlights of my life. The city of Kaohsiung is wonderful. It's an industrial city with semi-tropical on the port. This was from the window of my studio there. And, you know, the Prime Minister told me what he expected. I hadn't designed it yet. So he told me, I'm so curious to see what you're going to do. Right 3 minutes after that shot was taken. And I said, me too. So I went back to my mountain in Mexico and I really had an experience. And the whole experience of this project, my studio wasn't even finished in Mexico. But the piece is in the center of town where the 2 lines of the metro cross. Here are the 4 entries to the station. And before the end of the year, there's going to be a book which is going to be sold in Taiwan primarily, but it's going to be in English as well as in Chinese. And it's 256 pages with the whole story of this dome in Chinese and English. And it's the only book I have an autobiography in. It's a very interesting book, and I talk about the state of mind. I did this book like answering all the questions I was asked. The most common question that I was asked lecturing on the dome in Taiwan and everywhere else is, how the hell did you come out with that imagery? How did you invent this? I mean, every single time. So I said to myself, you're going to answer this. And I have an answer in this book. And it's a very interesting one, because I myself wasn't very clear. So I have to think. So let's just go through the dome like this, as if it's a video. 4 quadrants, 4 themes. One is the sun, one is the moon, the sea, the moon, conflict, life, love, sex, some few shots to give you the idea how complex it is. The figure of pain. I did all the major figures, I did them with Selena. Quagliata. I can't pronounce her name very well, that's why I just call her Selena. Here, the shaman. I made a figure for every major emotion. The shaman, pain, intelligence. This is, of course, the frame before the installation, and look at that. Freddie is installing, and I think he's the manager of the Derrick studio now, the head of the Derrick studio. But take a look at the size of that figure. It's amazing. And when I got the project, being from Rome, I went to the Sistine Chapel at the earliest person to arrive in the morning, and I said, help me. You know, help me. This is a big project. And it took so much out of my life, and I loved it, and it was just extraordinary. I have depicted everything, even darkness, famine, war. Grace. The Taiwanese are wonderful dancers, and they have wonderful dance groups. So I put Taiwanese dancers in the part of creation with the sun. The birth of intelligence, a man sitting on a rock filled with stars, it has in his brain there is a geometric form. It's a prism, a crystal, and it's like symbolic of the first thought. Blowing glass in Venice for part of the lovers, blowing glass at Lambert's, in Walsassen. Some of this wonderful glass is part of the figure of creativity, of creation, the dancer. Selena with the moon, the sun, and that's me. It's a figurine about that size. Me perplexed, facing down, thinking, what the hell is going on? And there's a war in my life. And a flower, the figure of meditation, inspired by my meditation teacher, and I believe we're done. We're inaugurating the president, my family, my son, my youngest daughter, my middle daughter, my brother. Dancers. And now it is a real national treasure monument. There is all kinds of concerts, weddings in the metro station. People come from abroad to have group weddings. And Selena was in Bangkok, in Thailand. And she was walking down the street, and she saw this and sent it to me. And she said, "You've made it, Narcissus. A whole nation is advertising itself through your work." And so, time for Taiwan. And then something I don't understand in Thailandese. But I wanted to show you this little watercolor, which is the size of this. This is me in Taunusstein. I spent so much time there, and the sky was so gray that I suffered. I'm a Mediterranean man. I live in Mexico, and then in Los Angeles. I wasn't used to being on this side of the Alps. And so that is my mood. I did a little of a German sky. It's one of my favorite watercolors that I've ever done. Then quickly, I want to show you that I work with dark themes, because I feel if I don't do something which deals with how difficult and painful life is, I don't feel I'm very real. So it took me 15 years to do this piece, and I did the glass I did the glass work at Derrick's, and then I shipped it, and it was glazed in Mexico. And about 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago is the first time I actually saw the piece in the frame. You know, the frame is expensive, and the people took a long time to glaze it, but it's called The Death of a Prisoner. And it is about constriction. There is one figure in flames, one figure is a skeleton, and with moths, and you can see the delicacy of the glazing, magnificent. This is an older piece called The Cell, and I haven't finished it yet. I have to finish it. This will be 30 years for me to take to finish this piece. But I'm going to finish it. I finished the pyramid, I'm going to finish this. Some of the drawings of this prisoner series, studies, and then another favorite of mine, which is in the Oakland Museum, which is the homeless man, almost as if somebody's locked in and somebody's locked out. And okay, so one more few thoughts. Why glass? Well, it's the only material which contains solidity and ethereal. It's the only material that is real and unreal. And no material is like glass. It's, so you know, it is formed in a volcano. This is Etna, Mount Etna in my land. And it's formed in the heat, and the same origin of the glass originates and produces light. So the heat of the volcano produces the glass and produces the light. And when you look at glass, you're looking at something that is both made from a volcano, but when the volcano is that hot, like the sun, like a spherical volcano, it produces light. And light has photons and they don't have a weight. So it's magical, not just because it kind of catches your attention, but because it's the only material that does that. And if you have a sensitive self, if you see, then the light is fascinating, and the glass is the vehicle. These two things have a wonderful relationship to each other. And it is there that I got, it is at Bullseye in the years that Maria Gracia Cabanilla is referring to, that I really got to know the volcano. And I loved it. And I did many pieces when they were hot. Using the reheater, which is what they use to iridize glass, I could just shove the work in, and 20 minutes later it was molten. So I could do 15, 20 pieces in a day. I mean, it was a long day, and but it was incredible. And that's how I learned. I did lots of pieces. Of course, it's a very crude tool. And I did my first major piece that traveled all over the world in that technique. Called Gateway Tonight. It went also on show in the Ducal Palace. There it is, in the Ducal Palace. So that's glass, that's light. That's the mystery that actually connects us all. Now, on a personal level, the one thing that, I mean, I was born and raised in Rome. I was a European, I was really European. I was brought up in a bourgeois family in Rome. I mean, there was nothing further from Rome than what this man proposed to me. In other words, what this man said to me, what this man taught me. I came to California and I met Suzuki Roshi, who was a Zen master who didn't like Japan because it was too traditional. So he left and nobody meditated. He was like a priest. He made funerals and weddings. and he really loved meditation. So he moved to California and he put a group of people that actually wanted to meditate. So I studied with him, you know, meditations for real, like a week. And he totally changed my life, completely, completely. And to a European mind that thinks that the body and the mind are very separate, he said no, they're completely connected, they're one. Few things, I want to say 2 or 3 things that really struck me. One, he described in detail how the energy moves. So he would say, if you want to do something, you have to do it 100%. If you do it 99%, no good. So this state of mind, somebody who told me it has to be 100%, and he said the distance between 99% and 100% is infinite. 100% magic happens. 99% no magic. Then another wonderful thing that I loved, he looked at me and all my student friends and he said, oh, you want to get married and you're in love and you hope to marry this woman and you want to make money and you want to be an artist and you want to... He looked at everything, he described everybody's wishes and desires. And then he said, how boring. How really boring. The real interesting thing is understanding life. That's really interesting. And the last thing I'll say about him is that he introduced me to the Asian concept of emptiness. And it made complete sense to me. So working with him and being with him for many years totally opened a universe for me. Oops. Still. And that universe permeated my life ever since. This is my first stained glass window. I did it when I was at the Zen Center, and I did his hands when they were together. That's my first stained glass window in 1971. I did some wonderful pieces. I enjoyed doing, after he died, I did a wonderful piece imagining a universe inside of him. The glass piece today is in the Metropolitan Museum. I redid the piece I did earlier in color. I have a piece going, which is the one with the blue, which is still I'm working on, which is him having tea, and he is the sky, and the solid part of the sky instead is flowers. Another watercolor on meditation. Okay. This is another part of my life. One of the best. And born in ancient Rome, I discovered my true self in the American wilderness. And later again, I discovered myself again in Mexico, but I did not build my latest house with my own hands. So the house, I'm going to first show you a few images, is the house I built by myself. Now, I want to say a few things. I want to share a few thoughts. Culture really changes. When I went there, the nearest house to me was 18 kilometers. So, no electricity, 18-kilometer ride to a little group of 5 houses, just like this thing. And then another 15 kilometers more to get to a small, tiny town with the market and all that. So I was out there, and not even the Native Americans lived where I lived, because they went to the beach in the summer and they were way inland in the winter. So I was the first person on the planet to live in this valley, which is right when you see that big thing, that gulch, it's called the Gulch, that was where I lived. And I could take a 5-kilometer ride to the beach, and it was like going, it was like landing on a planet. You know, when you see a Hollywood movie and they're landing on a planet, you know, it was like that. And I experienced it. And I built my house, and I dreamt of this house, and I still dream of this house all my life. I always asked, you know, I had some therapy at a certain point, and I said, why do I dream of my house? He says, well, of course it's you. You built it. It was like your skin, my therapist said. But it was a wonderful experience to build my own house. And I had somebody who taught me at every step. I would have this friend who would come out, spend a day with me, show me the next step is this. Then he would leave me there for 2 weeks, and I would do the next step. And then the next step is this, and he would leave me there for 2 weeks. And it was a wonderful place for me, and it had all kinds of weather. It even snowed, rarely, but it snowed. And what I experienced there was the fear of solitude. It was really silent, and it was really scary. And I loved it because it was like the agony and the ecstasy. Either you were like in heaven, in this primal place, or you were in hell because you were alone with yourself, with all your nightmares, and it was amazing. And but I won. I actually shed the fear. Every time I was afraid, I would drive to San Francisco in 5 hours. Then I'd drink in bars and be with friends and then go back home and then face the fear. And then one day actually I arrived, and I thought something had changed. And I started looking at the house, and I looked at the house and looked at the house, and then all of a sudden I realized what was different was me, not the house. I was not afraid anymore. Because when I used to go back, after being in San Francisco, I used to be so tense. And there I have, this is not a picture from there, I just took it from the internet, but there I saw, with no city light, no electricity, for 30 kilometers, I saw the sky like I had never, ever seen it. And you said I could actually make the shape of the galaxy. I could feel the disk. You spend a night, with a moonless night, there was like a spectacle. It was absolutely a spectacle. And you really felt, it's when I was there that I felt, I could feel that I was living in a galaxy. Before that, it was just a thought. It was something you see in books. But when I lived there, and I also felt what ancient people felt, when the moon is out, is a different world than when the moon is not there. To us, it's more or less, oh, the moon is out, oh, the moon. No, when the moon was out, you could go walking in the woods. When the moon is not out, you cannot see your hand in the darkness. I mean, it is extraordinary. I inherited a wonderful little house near Rome, that when my mother passed away, and I love this house. And it's right on the beach. It was where she used to go and rest, 40 minutes drive from Rome. She used to go on Thursdays and go back on Mondays. And it's right on the water. And you hear the water all day long and all night long, and it's magnificent. It's brought me, it's half mine, half my brother's, and I bought that little statue. And this is my house now. This is the view, and I was telling to Marita, the spaces I live are so important to me. Everything I do in my artwork and how I feel is so completely affected by the space. So this is my studio. This is when I was doing the dome, and which faces north. Yeah, it faces north. That window is completely north. And on the other side, and it's also, you'll notice that it's white. So my house is color-coded. When you're in white, you're in my studio or my office or something. When you're in terracotta color, you're in my house. So that's my house. Facing south, facing south with a little east. And it's a very, very, very special place. One morning I woke up, that was happening right outside my window. That's a volcano, by the way, on the upper left. And took the shot and went back to sleep. So, we're going to go through Rome, ancient Rome. I get back, I got a project in Rome to do a dome on the Basilica of Santa Maria degli Angeli. And all of these are the making of. American Airlines sponsored the travel of the work and the people. We inaugurated. So at the age of 50-something, I went back to Rome and I did a project on a Michelangelo building and a ruin. The one thing that I brought is this scientist who made these lenses which bring the cosmos in the basilica. So these lenses focus the sun, put it right in the middle of the basilica on solstice and equinox. So when that happens out there, this happens in the basilica. When that happens out there, the Venus goes in front of the sun, that happens on the floor of the basilica if you put a sheet of paper. I wish they'd clean it more, because now it's very dusty. But this is that big project. And the last thing in this first half is a new experience in my life. My children grew up, and they did not leave. They stayed around me, and we worked together, and we enjoy each other. So that's my son. He's very famous, and he's a crazy man. He's one of a kind. He's full of energy. He works with glass, more like a designer than sort of the artist I am. And he does crazy, wonderful things in the design field. That's a thing. And I love seeing him do things with blown glass and, you know, just amazing. He's an amazing designer. He just blows glass and then he facets it, makes facets. He joins rock with glass. And then he does these optical crazy things. He puts a light on some of his blown cast pieces, and that's my son with my youngest daughter in one of his projections. My youngest daughter, little Annalisa, intense, very intense person. She was, I think, 1.5 years old when that picture was taken. That's how she is now. That picture was taken a few days ago. She's a filmmaker. She works with the Bolex. She's well seen all over the world in festivals, does major installations this is a church that became a museum, so she did a video. She's a video artist and does major installations and art pieces. This is a glass cast piece on which she projects. And my middle daughter is not a visual artist, she's just a writer. So I can only tell you that she's very good looking and very talented. And And these are the last, this is the piece I left LA. I still haven't, I finished it, but they're finishing it up. It's my last dome. It's all going to be installed probably next month. And it's all fused, and this concludes, this is a building I hope they build, because it's going to be called the Hotel Quagliata. And I will make the entrance ways, and all three, myself, Annalisa, and Orfeo, will work, making the facade and the artwork. So, sorry for taking a little bit longer, but I will keep on going. Can you help me? Oh, I have to, how do I get rid of this? Okay, done. Done. Thought like a writer. So she convinced me to do a book with these, and this is the book. I saw it yesterday, no, the day before yesterday for the first time. Of course, it's printed in Slovenia. It's published by a German publisher, the same as the other book. They're such good quality people at Arnolce. So anyhow, the book, if you're an English speaker or a Spanish speaker, you can read the whole thing. There's some Italian, both in Spanish and English. So, the rant, it's divided into 4 chapters. The rant is something I've written over 40 years. A prose poem written and rewritten between 1971 and 2013. The rant means nörgla. Did I pronounce it right? Okay, so I was worried that it would be very difficult. So this is the rant, divided in several parts. And it has pictures and thoughts, and it's like a real rant. I'm complaining and I'm talking and I'm sort of, but I basically I'm sort of trying to say, what's the problem? You know, there's parts that are illustration, and it ends, the last part is original. I wrote it in Taunusstein. The last part is me talking to the last person of our species that is going to be alive. Because there will be a last. We can't imagine it, but there will be a last. Just like the dinosaurs, there must have been one last dinosaur. So I'm talking to the last, and that's how this poem ends. So then the next chapter is poems. The next chapter is a selection of poems written between 1971 and 2018. And they are by subjects, like my friend said. Divide them by subjects. So one is light. And here is one that I am going to read. Stop being distracted by what light illuminates. Just look at light. Then die, dissolve, till you cast no shadow. And I hope they translated it well in German. So there is the actual 2 pages. Then there is delirium. I'm going to read something here and there just to give you a feeling. A lion killed me. It was sudden. I still remember being torn apart. I was frightened. Darkness entering my soul. Ink spiraling down the drain. I was a man walking in the trees. Now a transparent shadow walking through the trees. In the emerald glowing jungle. It was 2.5 million years ago. Reflections. Ho l'orrore della bellezza. I'm horrified by beauty. I prefer the night. a mammal, a deformed mammal in the autumn of my years, old ancient soul of a mutant in costume, and on and on. So, albero di limone, si aprono i tuoi occhi e mi vedi. Odore di caldarroste nella brezza, terra umida e foglie arrugginite sotto i piedi scalzi. L'aria è limpida come un cristallo, luce di tardo pomeriggio. Mi duole il cuore e non so perché. Nell'anticamera dell'esistenza, mai vista, mai immaginata, nemmeno sognata, l'immagine informe aspetta, paziente, immobile, sola di essere inventata. And then I worked a lot in getting the words and the pictures to do something together. Lacrime nere, lacrime acide, ipocrite lacrime, le pareti sudano. Utero crudele, la cella si ricorda dei suoi prigionieri, abbracciati e soffocati. This one obviously relates to my work with the jail. Di che discutono tra loro le figure di Rembrandt e di Rubens? Quando chiudono i musei, liberi dai loro doveri, le figure dei quadri smettono di posare, fanno feste, fanno pettegolezzi su chi le ha dipinte, si vantano della loro età i personaggi più antichi, le figure rinascimentali si burlano delle deformate figure di Picasso. Vi è mai capitato di sorprendere per caso qualcuno che arriva in ritardo a posare nel suo quadro? Some of these are from the 70s, the 80s, the 90s. You can sort of see that there's a play. Emptiness. He died alone. Nobody claimed his body. This is the earliest sketch that is in this book. I did it in 1968. It's a poem dedicated to my meditation teacher. And this is one of my daughter's favorite poems. Alone, wounded, ugly, motionless on the beach, facing the sharp icy wind, naked, without a thought, aware of everything, understanding nothing. Monster. That's the way it appears in. Then there is 16 pages of color with some of my latest work. Some of the watercolors. There is a dedication to Van and Lonnie in the Mediterranean Treasure series. These are my last Mediterranean treasure pieces. This piece I did at Bullseye. And this is the last thing I will talk about in this lecture, so bear with me 3 or 4 more minutes. A unique experience I had. I was walking, I was in very bad humor. I had just inaugurated a piece. It was the 11th of December of 2010. And I went walking in the mountains, and I was on top of a mountain, and a vulture started coming around me. He came 2 circles around me, just 2 meters away. And at the end of the second circle, I decided to face him. Put my hands together, saying, "Okay, you're there, I'm here. Let's see what's going to happen here." And He kept flying around me, and I kept looking into his eyes. And he did 12 more circles. And I looked in his eye for a period of approximately 3.5 to 4 minutes. And something happened. I mean, it makes my LSD trips when I was young very mild. You know, very, very mild. So here I'm recalling this experience, and this is the page, the last page of the book, really. And I want to read this to you. Vestimos de negro. Vivimos en tres mundos. Somos viento. No somos cazadores. Al podrido mundo nosotros limpiamos. Y lo llevamos al cielo. Limpia tus alas y vuela. Vuelas a las alturas, vuela al ras de la tierra, clávate en las extrañas de la esfera, guarda tu distancia y desconfía de los humanos. Evita los vivos, cómetelos si están muertos. Mutant, self-portrait, and one last poem. Nell'incendio del vuoto il corpo arde. Nelle ceneri la mia verità. Anche il nulla ha un sapore, adoro ciò che non c'è. Thank you very much.